Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag. From the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
We're back here on the Brown Sports Bag today on WCLU Radio. You can catch the show every Monday on WCLU Radio. It's easy for some people to say. I'm still adjusting to it, I guess. From 4 to 5 p.m., this is Brown Sports Bag. John Butler and I are here. We're going to break down some different stuff. Of course, the football season locally for our folks has come to an end. So in this first segment, John and I are going to talk about the game that was Friday night, but less so the game that was Friday night because that kind of got out of hand there, John. But more about just the scope of the season for the Trojans, maybe some of the seniors that had an impact on the program that they're definitely going to miss, and just kind of some thoughts overall about the work John Myers and his coaching staff did this year, John.
All right, tell me where you want to start.
Well, let's start with the Friday night game so we can get that part out of the way. Okay. The final was 59-14, and really, with about, 3 minutes to go in the first half, I think the game was 17-14. And, one of the things that kind of happened was there was basically a play right before the half. And I thought the Trojans were in pretty good shape. But one of the things that happened was they gave up a big touchdown, and and then they turned around and turned the ball over and gave up another score. And the game just it was over with after that for all intents and purposes, because the Trojans were struggling to move the ball, but they were playing pretty well. Mostly they were kind of struggling to stop the running back. I think his name was Luke Ballard. Was that his name?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, he was a for real good running back, John.
Yeah, he had over 300 yards. 323 to be exact, maybe more than that, 330, something like that. He had a ton of yards. But, yeah, that's kind of where the game, I'm not going to say it was lost, but I guess sort of it's probably true. When it was – Barren actually had cut the lead to 17-14.
Yeah.
Well, let's just go back. The first touchdown by Tate Spillman was tremendous.
Yes, it was.
The touchdown in which he scrambled close to 40 yards for a touchdown was an incredible play, to say the least. I mean, he played really, really well, I thought.
Yeah.
Kind of like he's played down the stretch, to be honest with you. He's just an incredible football player. So that was fun to watch. But Barren had cut it 17-14. And kicked off, and I think I said on the air, if we could hold them right here, mm-hmm. It'd be just do great for our confidence. And we did, and they scored. I think they scored on a touchdown pass, if I can recall. One of the seam patterns, about 25, 30-yard touchdown pass. I think that's right. And to put them up, what would that be, 24-14?
Yes, that's right.
And we got it back with right around a minute maybe, something mm-hmm. like that. And it's just a toss sweep to Dalen. I think it's a toss sweep to Dalen, and we dropped it. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it wasn't a toss sweep. I mean, it could have been a handoff.
It's just kind of an inside handoff.
Okay, it was an inside handoff and fumbled. And that was the worst thing that could happen at the time. So they took over inside our 20 mm-hmm. with under a minute, and they proceeded to score. And I just felt like I
think that one was the touchdown pass, the 31, when they won that seam route.
Okay. Well,
now, the one before that, I believe what happened was they had run a play, and I think Barren had him hemmed up in the backfield, and the guy broke a tackle and then just escaped. That may have been to convert a third down, and then I think they scored on a pass play. But the one like right down the middle was the one put them up 31-24, I think.
All right. So, once that happened, it just seemed like just kind of knocked the air out of us, and we really never recovered. Even though we got the ball to start the second half, we didn't go anywhere with it and so forth. And sometimes you just run into situations where you get to a certain level, and Great Crossing is by far the best team we play.
Oh yeah.
And you get to a certain level, and we hung in there for a while, but over the course of the game. And it's different, too. We were playing from behind, and we have not played from behind a lot this year. In fact, I don't know if we've had a largest deficit maybe all all year and may have been a touchdown.
Right.
We ended up losing to North Hardin 14-6, but it was within a touchdown most of the game.
Yeah.
I don't think we were down 14-0. I don't think so. Maybe we were. But so trying to play catch up is it. Even though I don't think Great Crossing is great defensively, but once you get down 2 or 3 touchdowns, another team knows you're going to throw. That puts you in a serious disadvantage, in terms of what the defense can do in terms of blitzing and pass coverage and so forth. But yeah, kind of got away from us in the second half. I don't think the score, they thoroughly beat us, but it wasn't. It wasn't like the final score is 59-14. That's a little deceiving.
I think the last 2 touchdowns came. They still had their varsity in, and Barren had some JV players in the game at that point.
I made some comments in the booth near the end. I wasn't real happy with what they were doing with their coaching staff.
Yeah.
First of all, I didn't think it was very sportsmanship. I didn't like the sportsmanship of keep your starters in when the other team has clearly conceded.
Yes.
And plus, I don't think it's smart.
No.
I mean, Luke Ballard gained over 300 yards, and he's like 3rd in the state anyway in running.
Mm-hmm.
His last touchdown came with a running clock, 52-14, with about 2 minutes to go. Barren had their players out, and he ran it like 8 times during that series. Just kept handing it off to him, and I didn't like him scoring before that time, too, with 4 minutes when the game was over. Because I'm thinking, you're now in the state semifinals against Ryle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how bad would it be to have your best player and the quarterback, too, is in?
Yes.
To get one of those two hurt when the game was officially over. And they were talking about some nonsense about setting a school record. Well, the school's only been around 5 years. And school records, I think, are great.
Uh-huh.
I think there's asterisks when you do it when you're rubbing it in.
Yeah.
If you get a school record and you win 31-25, that's one thing. But when you win 59-14, I'm not a big fan of that. And, I'm tired of what I just think younger coaches hear what they say on TV, that it's when they're talking about the pros mainly, it's your job to stop us.
Right.
Well, in high school, that's not necessarily the same. And it's just I think I made a comment while I was over there doing the game. I'd have been mad if I was a Great Crossing parent and I had a couple of kids on the team who were backup players.
Yeah. Well, it is the it's your job to stop us is true in the confines of the game itself. But once it's out of hand, the other team puts their JV in. Yeah. Generally, that's a coach. That's a signal between coaches. Say, yeah, you want it.
Yeah.
Let's get some other people in who get a little playing time in this atmosphere who weren't going to play.
I was thinking Patricia Varley could have had 4,000 points if I played that way. Yeah. But I was always kept thinking I wouldn't want to be treated that way if I was the opposing coach, and I kept selfishly, also I didn't want to turn an ankle, hurt a knee, or things like that. I just didn't like, so that part I didn't like it, and the game kind of got out of hand. There were some incidents that happened out of frustration and so forth, But all in all, a great season for Barren. I mean, I don't think you can say it any other way. To go 10-3, go to the third round of the playoffs is, it's a historical season in a lot of ways. So, congratulations to the team. I think they made a lot of people proud, and that's why it's important to enjoy the journey, because when it's over, it's over. Right. But you ought to enjoy the journey and the process during that period of time, and it's harder too when you're coaching, because it's this game now, I got to get ready for the next game. Yeah. But from fans' perspective and things like that, I do think it brought some joy to especially a lot of people who alumni, a lot of former players who maybe not got to experience that. So it's kind of cool to see that. Yeah, and as I was watching the game, just one more comment about the game itself. Going back to the best team Barren had played, Great Crossing didn't do anything fancy. Their offensive line blocked extremely well, and we talk about the yards that Ballard ran for even before we get to those last two touchdowns. Yes. He was running a lot of yards before he was even getting touched. Yes, he had way over 200 before the game was over, when they should have taken him out. Whatever I said about the coach, he does a good job. Yeah. They were well schooled. Unlike some of the other teams I've seen at times, where Henderson County should have kept giving it to their back. They decided to throw when they probably should have. He kept with it. He just He did the entire game, which he shouldn't have.
Yeah.
But they stayed with it, and I'll give them credit too. They were 2-9 last year.
Yeah.
Now, how they got from 2-9 to this, I don't know about players moving in here and there. You know, It's a big school.
Yeah.
1,700 people, and it's a phenomenal school.
Yeah.
Beautiful, best facilities I've ever been to.
Yeah.
So how that had that quick of a turnaround, I'm not really for sure, but they got a really good football team.
Yeah, and in the game plan prior to those last the last 5 or so 6 minutes of the game, I mean, he that coach followed the rule. If you can't stop what I'm doing, don't stop doing it.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally they would fake it and throw it.
Yeah.
And they only threw it like 6-7 times, but they were effective, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And they had another little back that they gave it to occasionally too.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it was all Luke Ballard, and that was the right game plan. Except he carried it 10 times too many at the end.
Right. I did think about, as I was watching the game, I was like, this is kind of like the Central Hardin game, except Central Hardin wasn't as good as this team.
No question. This team was much faster than Central Hardin.
Yeah. My son and I were commenting on the fact they had players on that team that never touched the ball, but you could watch them on special teams, and they were also lined up out there at wide receiver and that kind of stuff, and you're like, dang, this team has 5 or 6 guys that Barren has not seen this year, and they don't even really use them. But back to the seniors, and you mentioned the Tate Spillman run. I think of all the seniors, he's going to be the most missed one because of his leadership and just his ability to play football.
Oh, he's a heck of a player. I mean, they'll miss several, but when quarterback's the most important position on a team in football.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And he makes a ton of plays on script and off script. That's the little things that people, that goes beyond coaching. You can get them in the right call and call the right play, but sometimes players have to make plays when it's the wrong play or the play doesn't work.
Right.
He can do it. He's equally as good on defense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
when you talk about the quarterback, but playing safety, he's made some humongous plays this year at safety.
Losing him, you're losing 2 players because you're losing 2 positions.
Yeah.
So that's a big loss. But there are several players. A couple linemen are gone.
Yeah.
And the line was really good this year.
Yeah, like Ryan Harrison and I think Charlie Poland.
Yes, so they're gone. Colton Thomas, who had a good year on the defensive line. Braden Houchins, played outstanding from the linebacker position. He was the leading tackler, second lead tackler. He and Corbin Wells went back and forth. Also the punter.
Yeah. Yeah, you go back to that North Hardin game that they won. The punting that he had in that game was like some of the best high school punting I've seen.
Yes,
and it made a difference in that game.
That's right. And there are some. I mean, they've got. I know we're leaving some people out. I'm just kind of gone blank. I don't have a roster.
Well, you got Bray Bewley playing in the defensive
side. I
side.
forgot Bray Bewley was offense and defense, and ended up having 5 or 6 interceptions as well. Yeah. Had a big fumble recovery Friday night too. We went in there, and I think we scored after that.
Yep.
Bray will be, sorely missed. So Barren, you're going to lose players. That's just you can't keep them. You're going to lose players, and those are big holes to fill. But they have a lot of good ones back.
Yes.
It's one of those. They had a really good sophomore class. You throw Dalen Thomas in.
Yeah.
Corbin Wells was. I mean, defensively, he's linebacker-wise, he's about as good as we've had in a long time as a sophomore.
Yeah.
He's back, and Briggs Harris, Jordan Harris, Jackson Bird.
Yeah.
I mean, those are just some of the quote-unquote skilled players. There are some linemen back too. So, if they got some holes to fill, and but oftentimes there's carryover too. At Hart County, there's carryover. Confidence sometimes breeds that too. So.
Yeah.
But there's some big holes, big leadership. But, good year. I think Coach Myers has to be thrilled, to come in and to go this far. That's probably farther than most people's expectations. Probably has to be.
Yeah.
It has to be since it never got there anyway that far.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, it changes some things for Barren County football because now people are going to expect more out of the program next year. Dropping back down to 5A, I mean, you're going to be in the district with Bowling Green and Greenwood, but the rest of that district is one that Barron's competed with and played well against in the past. And, you kind of look around and you say, I mean, Bowling Green, probably better than Great Crossing. I would guess that next year when they play Bowling Green will be the best team they play all year.
Probably, yeah. And they lose the quarterback.
They do.
But
they do
always
lose a lot of players.
But they lose quarterbacks, and they just they keep going. Yeah.
Like Tate Spillman, there's only one of them. There's probably only one Deuce Bailey, but Bowling Green seems to have 2 or 3 Deuce Baileys waiting in the wings all the time.
Yeah.
And so, but when you look at that district, I mean, it's a district they can do well in.
Yeah, because South Warren moves out.
Yes, that's right, moving up to 6A.
So it's Warren Central.
Yeah.
Down. Grayson County's been really good.
They have been.
But that's the team that you would think Barren should play with.
Yeah.
Don't think Ojai County's going to play in it.
Right.
And then you have Greenwood, a team that Barren has traditionally played.
Yeah.
Coach Howard does a good job.
Yeah.
We've won a few, and Greenwood's won a few against us. But it's a district that you should be able to manage.
Yeah. And I think the schedule is going to, they're going to have, I think, Glasgow on the schedule, Metcalf, Monroe, maybe Allen. I don't know who all is actually on the schedule for next year, but it'll be a good traditional schedule for Barren and a district that they can compete in. And, after this run, people will be looking and saying, hey, what can you do going forward?
Yep.
And I think Coach Myers, he's one of the better high school football coaches I've ever been around. I like the way he runs his program and the way he coaches. And, I mean, it bore out this year. Let's talk a little bit real quick about some of the other games that happened in the area. Hart County ended up losing to Union County 41-21.
A little surprised because I don't think Union jumped on them quickly. One time I think it's 28-7, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
So
that running back Jaron Johnson he's really
real.
tough.
He's for real. I thought the game would just be more competitive. To be honest with you.
I did too. And I think Hart had like 2 turnovers early. I mean, I don't know what the weather conditions were like in this neck of the woods, but they were not great in Great Crossing in Georgetown. And so that may have been an effect in that game. It's probably the second.
Both teams run it, though.
They do. You would think that the run would mitigate some mistakes, but I guess it's the difference. Jaron Johnson's a dude who they're just going to put the ball in his hands. They're going to run that wildcat. So there's not even handoffs or throws. I mean, it's just basically you're going to run at the line of scrimmage, and he's tough, and maybe that makes a difference in a game like that. I don't know. But then we had, South Warren beat North Bullitt 42-7. Not shocking. Bowling Green beat Atherton 44-20. And then those two will play each other this coming Friday for a chance to go to the state finals and probably play Cooper in the state finals, I think.
Yeah, I think Cooper will be a favorite. Yeah. So. Yeah, South beat Bowling Green in a tight one the first time. It was
24-20.
Yeah, it's just back and forth. It's out south. I don't think that really matters.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised either team who wins that game.
Yeah.
Both have great quarterbacks, Division I quarterbacks.
And I guess just around the state, there were a couple of shocking outcomes. Covington Catholic beat Boyle County 31-28. Boyle beat them in the state finals last year. I think it was 41-0. So
Boyle had won 4 straight titles.
Yeah.
And hadn't lost in over 2 years.
Yeah, they were ranked 13th or so in the nation.
Fumbled at the 1 with a minute to go. They were going in for the win and fumbled at the 1 and went out of the end zone.
Yeah, it was a wild play because I guess the guy was diving for the pylon. And
it's their best, but it's that Quisenberry kid, I think, wasn't it?
It was. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he had slipped the tackle and then I think dove for it and the ball got knocked out.
And Mayfield got blown out.
They did. That really didn't surprise me as much. They were down this year.
Okay.
They got a new coach at Mayfield this year.
Okay.
The other guy retired. But, it's Mayfield. They're sort of like Bowling Green. You just expect them to roll back out there every year and be just as good.
Yeah, I want to know what the betting odds were to have Boyle County and Mayfield get beat.
And then also Pikeville, which had won 3 state 1A championships and lost to Sayre. If you put them in a pool and picked, if you were a betting person and put them in the pool and picked against them, you probably made money.
Central lost to Cal
in
a rematch right there. Cal probably win the 3A.
Yeah, probably so. So, it was an interesting Friday night. There were some interesting outcomes, but for the most part, things kind of went the way people expected. But the ones we just named were some pretty interesting outcomes. Anything else about the high school football season? That it's in the bag, John. That's
in the bag. Around here we move on to basketball.
That's
next.
Right. A week away to basketball, John.
That's right.
All right. This is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
John, we're back here on the Brown Sports Bag, WCLU Radio. 103.1 and 104.7. You guys can catch us every Monday from 4 to 5, presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. The WKU had the path to the Conference USA Championship in their hands. They just had to win the games. And then last week they lost a wild one to Louisiana Tech 12-7, which gave them a loss in the conference. And then Liberty, they go and play at Liberty on Saturday. They can win that game. They still have their path to the championship in their hands, and they lose that one 38-21. And I think Veltkamp, he finally, the last two games, has looked like maybe what the coaches had seen where he struggles in the last two games, because I think he threw 3 interceptions in this game against Liberty, and then I don't know what his passing percentage was against Louisiana Tech, but it wasn't great. And so now they still have a chance to get in, but they got to do some wrangling because they play Jacksonville State this coming Saturday at home. Jacksonville State is guaranteed to be in the championship game. They're undefeated in the conference. So WKU has to win that game, and then Liberty is playing Sam Houston, which WKU beat. And if Sam Houston can knock off Liberty, then WKU can still get in the conference championship game. But it's not looking as well. It's definitely, they're not in control of their own destiny anymore, John.
No, they've it's been unusual because normally Coach Helton's team improves as the year goes on, where they get better.
Yeah.
And the loss 2 weeks ago, when they lost to a 2-7 team at home on that, I can't remember what day that. I mean, it was the game before Liberty. I can't remember who it was.
Louisiana Tech.
They were 2-7 and only put up 7 points was kind of a shocker.
Yeah.
And this past going to Liberty, they gave up 290 yards on the ground in the first half.
Yeah.
They gave up over 400 yards rushing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't win that way. There's no way. I don't care what the quarterback does, good, bad, ugly, or whatever. You're not going to win when you give up over 400 yards rushing. So, I mean, they won't be a favorite against Jacksonville State.
No,
I don't guess. So, I don't know. It's hard to predict anything in college football right now about who goes where or this or that. But no, it's been a rough 2 weeks for them. I mean, they look like they were on the verge of having a tremendous year.
Yeah.
And boy, they've lost two tough ones. There's no disgrace to lose to Liberty. How you get beat though, just getting dominated physically on the ground is disappointing. But the shocker was the Louisiana Tech loss.
Yeah.
12-7.
It was kind of one of those sandwich games where they had a good win against Sam Houston, I think, and so it was the between game between two big games, and that game offensively they played like they were looking ahead or something. But yeah, Liberty I think ran the ball 63 times. I mean, they just physically dominated the game, as you said, and WKU couldn't get them off the field, and maybe that put Veltkamp in a position where he's pressing some, trying to make some big plays, throwing the ball and that kind of jazz, and ends up, throwing in the interceptions, or, you never know, the receivers may run the wrong route.
Yeah, I didn't watch enough of the game to tell.
Yeah, so I mean, it does put them in a precarious position if they wanted to. I know one of the goals every year for them is to get that conference championship game, and they like I said, they had it in their hands. They just had to win the games, and now they're left up to the fates of some other games. And right now, after what I saw Liberty do, even though Liberty messed around and lost to Kennesaw State, which was winless at the time, I still think they know what they're trying to do. And, Sam Houston's defense was not terrific. They have a pretty good offense for the most part. So, I mean, Liberty just has to be favored in that game as well, I would think. Meanwhile, Kentucky lost to number 3 Texas 31-14.
Not all losses are bad, though. I think they found their quarterback.
Yeah.
So, that's where, if I'm a Kentucky fan, you lose, but I think for the first time in a long time, I think there's certainty now.
Yeah.
That the Bowles kid is the one.
Yeah.
I thought he played really well.
Yeah.
Moved the ball up and down the field, made some tough throws, got some movement. I think he can play one more and still keep his red shirt year. I think you get 4.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's only played in 3, so he should be able to play against Louisville, regardless if he can or cannot. I think they've kind of got their guy next year without having to go out and take a chance on paying for somebody to come in and this. I mean, it's true. We're not laughing. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars on players, and sometimes these quarterbacks are over $1 million.
Well, the part I laughed about was the fact that I thought they'll still go out and pay to bring somebody in. They will.
They may, but then the risk is you could run off this kid.
Yeah, I mean that we've talked about this on this show. I mean, it's one of those things.
It's ridiculous. I'll just be honest with you. I mean, I know there's people out there, and I'm for players making their own money and all that stuff. And like I said, that's great, but I'm not a big fan of bidding wars and things like that in college. I'm not a huge fan of that part. But I do think they found themselves a quarterback, or at least they ought to go with it.
Well, I'm with you, and this kind of goes back. I get why they didn't want to put him out there earlier in the season.
Yeah, I do too.
Because of the red shirt, and you don't want to burn the red shirt.
He's a true freshman. Yeah, let him sit and let him learn. I think they handled him fine this year, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, they were probably disappointed. Their team wasn't as good offensively.
Right.
And maybe the quarterback they brought in wasn't quite as good.
Yeah.
But I think they handled it. He probably wasn't ready to play early, so they probably handled it okay.
Yeah, and they get to put him out there. He gets this experience, but again, the fear I have is that what they do is they go spend the money and bring in another quarterback anyway, and call it competition. And this kid may be like, but I want to play.
Right. Yep.
But maybe since he's not exactly local, but since he's a Kentucky kid, maybe he has a certain different sense of wanting to be there and play. Who knows? You just don't know how these things go.
Right.
But I do hope he plays the game against Louisville, because I would like to see the full body of work. And also,
if they want to beat Louisville, that's their best chance.
I'd say so. And speaking of Louisville,
big win for them.
Yeah, ran over Pittsburgh,
37-9 after probably the most disappointing loss in Coach Brom's 2 years. Disappointing. It's the loss. Stanford, they had no reason to lose at Stanford.
Right.
Stanford's not very good. They had a 16-point lead late in the game and just gave that game away, which takes away all their chances of getting to the ACC tournament. They lost 3 straight at the end of the year, but at least they were the good teams.
Yeah.
So Louisville still having, they're 7-4, maybe 7-3, something like that. They're having a really good year. They need to beat Kentucky, and just from the Louisville perspective, Kentucky's won 5 straight.
Yeah.
And this would be a big boost from the. I think Louisville needs it more than Kentucky. Kentucky's won 5 straight against them,
right?
And it's kind of taken over that series. And I think for the Louisville group and Brom himself, I think he needs to go up there and get a win if he can.
Well, and Brom being the guy that everybody wanted to come to Louisville, at some point in time he has to have. Maybe they have had a signature win already since he's been there. Yeah, I'd say so. But they need that in-state recruiting win is what they need, and that would be the victory over Kentucky if they want to get there. They release those college football playoff polls like every Tuesday, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
They give you an idea of the 12 teams that can make the cut, and then they have to explain the whole process of why a Boise State or BYU could make it. One of them will. One of those teams will, because there'll be a conference champion, and not only will, but they'll get a bye in the first round. So they have to explain that every week. Maybe they don't. Maybe I have to read it every week to remember why they get a bye. But anyway, what do you think of those polls? I mean, what does it tell you?
It's for ratings, TV. It's exposure. That's all it is. I mean, it's until all the games are in, it doesn't mean really anything. But it gives people that snapshot, that idea. Yeah. Probably amps up the pressure on a lot of programs.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
You think that's what's wrong with Alabama? Too much pressure on them? They scored 3 points on Saturday.
I think the quarterback's a problem.
Yeah.
He's played awful this year.
Which is weird, because he looked so good early.
He's played atrocious.
Yeah.
And, they've lost 2 games. There is no way they should get in. Losing at Vanderbilt in Oklahoma, they've got 3 losses. There's no way they should get in. Ole Miss not going to get in now.
No.
So
frittered that one away.
So the question is, do you reward Indiana with 1 loss against a nothing schedule? Should they get in over some 2-loss SEC teams who are probably better than they are?
Yeah. It is kind of we are going to wind up with a fascinating.
You can have it's like in men's basketball.
Yeah.
If there's 64 teams and there's always a fight over the last few that don't get in.
Yeah.
So when you only had two to go. There was a fight over 3, 4, and 5 shooter. When there was 4, like it has been, there's who didn't get in, like Florida State last year.
Yes.
Now we're dropping down to what, 12 now. There's always going to be that debate, and there's clearly going to be changes after this year.
Yeah.
Conferences don't need to have these conference tournaments could actually hurt you.
Oh yeah, these championship games.
Because Georgia now has snuck in, and if they get beat in a conference tournament, that gives them 3 losses. It may knock them out.
Right.
Where if they don't play, they're in.
I do think these conference championship games, what you just pointed out, is kind of interesting because
plus the kids are playing too many games. That's the other thing.
Yeah, I think these conference championship games are interesting in this sense because it is money. It's a money maker for the conference, but it may be a killer for the programs that make it there.
Then they'll keep it. Because everything they do is about money.
Well, is that the only? I think that's the only reason that at this point they have the conference championship games.
All the stuff they do
right?
is about money. Yeah, it doesn't matter how many, and from some of these players who have like NFL futures, you can't be good for them to go from playing 12 to 13 games to 17.
Yeah,
14 playoff plus a conference title. I mean, eventually that can't be real good for you.
And, part of the thing is,
I like the playoffs, but maybe they don't need to play. Maybe they should play 11 regular season games, no conference, something like that, rather than keep adding.
I think they should just play 17 games since they're professionals now.
You're right,
but not actually. I don't think they should.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
They do get paid.
Yeah,
so.
from the viewer's point, if all you care about, like I said, if all you care about just watching the games, then, and I'm sure most people are that way. They don't. I just want to watch a game. If they want to play 30, that's fine with me. I'll just try to sometimes look at it from a different point of view.
Hey, I think
it's the sausage, right?
Yes,
it is the sausage. If you like sausage, don't look at how it's made, right?
That's exactly it, man. Don't. You will never eat it again if you look at how it's made. But I think that conference championship thing is a good, interesting situation because if you're Georgia and whomever else makes the cut for the conference championship. I guess it'll be Texas and Georgia, looks like, right? So for the SEC, I mean.
It looks like it.
Yeah, so if they make the cut, they're both playing an extra game and both would be, at this point, projected to make the playoffs. So it does kind of and it does kind of make it a little bit interesting in terms of how that works out.
I guess the winner gets the bye.
Yeah, I guess so. And so
the loser may stay in. I don't know.
I mean, if it's Texas that loses, they probably stay in, and Georgia gets the bye.
Mm-hmm.
But if Georgia loses, they might be out, and then Texas gets a bye. But also, the other thing that happens out of this, I think, is we're getting closer and closer to a real conversation about the strongest conferences, because the old argument was the SEC was so strong that the 3 loss teams were better than a lot of people's, one win, 1 loss team. The conference is so big, I'm not sure that argument is. It seems like it would make it more valid, but when you have years where Vanderbilt is cropping up, and yes, they have a good team this year, or Ole Miss even for that matter.
Good team.
I mean, they're a good team, but if they were, if they were having to go outside the conference and play some of these teams to try to get some ratings up out of conference and then play their conference schedule, maybe they're not as good as they look. Maybe the SEC's not as good as it looks.
I don't know. I think they're probably better than the Big Ten. I'm not sold on the Big Ten at all. I
am with you on that front. Yep. Every year I'm still with you on that front. And I think we have a hard time even knowing about the ACC right now because of some of the programs in it that are at the top of the list are ones that are.
It's not very good this year.
Yeah. I mean, when SMU is your number 1 team.
They may be legit.
Yeah.
But we don't know. They came in for free.
They did.
Yeah, they get no TV money for the first 5 years. They're playing for free. That's why I'm kind of for them.
They got that oil money. That's boosted them up.
They are playing for free. That's part of their agreement.
All right. Anything else on college football here, John?
No.
All right. This is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's in Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Welcome back to the Brown Sports Bag here on WCLU Radio. This is James Brown, John Butler. We're presented by McDonald's Glasgow. We're going to talk a little bit about some college basketball. Big game coming up Tuesday night, John, or Tuesday afternoon, WKU plays in number 9 Kentucky. Who you got in that one?
Well, probably the Cats. I mean, it's a big step up for WKU. WKU's, they've got 2 losses, but they were lost to 2 good teams, Wichita and the team out west. I've gone blank.
Grand Canyon.
Grand Canyon, which they kind of gave that game away.
Yeah.
WKU has a lot of players back. They got nothing to lose. I think the game will probably be competitive, but Kentucky, they look like the real deal to me. They've beaten teams they should beat handily, and their best competition against Duke on national TV, they were fantastic.
Yeah.
And I don't have anything bad to say about the Mark Pope era. I've just been very, very impressed with their team.
It's kind of fascinating. We have, at our 3 major programs, we have 3 new head coaches this year because we have Hank Plona at WKU and Mark Pope at Kentucky and your man at Louisville, whose name,
Kelsey.
Yeah, that name suddenly escaped me. But I think so far, just right out of the gates, they all look like they've done a good job in their recruiting and their team organization. I think all 3 teams look pretty good so far, John.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, so far, so good. I mean, it's situation is different. Western returns most of their players.
Yeah.
He kept most of their players.
Yeah, and he was an assistant there last year,
right.
so, I mean, he knew what was
Louisville,
going on.
Kentucky has brand new rosters. In fact, no returner stayed on either team.
Right?
Yeah, there's no returner.
I guess I didn't
players.
really realize that. I thought maybe there was one straggler hanging around, but no. Yeah, so, I mean, it's that is very different. Like, just right out of the gate, do you have any impressions of any teams like that really stand out to you?
I haven't watched a lot, to be honest with you.
It's hard to tell early in the men's basketball season.
It really is. It's just so hard to tell. I assume UConn is for real. They got most of their players are back. Lost a few, but they still have a lot of their nucleus back. It'd be hard to win it three in a row. I mean, the pressure and so forth. Somebody had to eventually knock them off. I think Duke will improve a lot. I was impressed with Duke against Kentucky.
Yeah.
But what I've seen, I mean, I've watched Alabama. I'm sorry, I have seen Alabama play twice. And that Alabama lost at Purdue. They're really good.
Yeah.
But I think Kentucky's really good.
Yeah.
Just what I've seen so far. But it's a tough read right now. It's college basketball has changed so much in the last 5 years with the transfer portal and things like that. Just players move in and out and so forth. And it's a tough read, especially in November.
Yeah, it is. Like we were talked about after UConn won the back-to-back last year, the Hurley's job is one of the most impressive ones in men's college basketball in a long time because he's figured out somehow to take basically new rosters and, I mean, he had some holdovers, but only like 2 or 3. Take new rosters and he's got a system that seems to be working, but he's not necessarily running the same system every time. He's able to just kind of construct it, and as the season goes along, and then they perform in this tournament situation the last 2 years. And, I mean, they've really been dominant in the tournament both years, which is the even more shocking thing, I think.
Well, especially last year. I don't know if anybody played within 10 points.
Yeah. I mean, so that's the most shocking part. And that has kind of shone a light on some of the other coaches who profess to have a particular kind of system and has turned up the heat on them a little bit, I do believe, that are, long-time successful coaches, which is why when I see a program like Kansas right now at the top of the rankings, I'm not convinced they're the number 1 team in the nation. I mean, I know it's early, so you can't tell.
Well, people are guessing.
Yeah,
It's safe to go with Kansas, and they do have their point guard back, and the big kid is back, and you have Bill Self. So, you won't go wrong by picking them number 1 because they're probably within the top 5.
Right.
I mean, they have enough players back, so college basketball there'll be 10 number 1s by the time the year's over. But Kansas will, if the point guard and the big kid stays healthy, they'll be there at the end. They'll be a favorite to get to the Final Four.
Yeah. Now you do keep up with the women's basketball a little bit more because you do the WKU women broadcast. How do the WKU women look so far?
They're having a good year at 5-0. First 5-0 start in over 20 years, I think.
Yeah.
And they are they had 4 starters back, 5 returning players, and they had 9 newcomers. Mm-hmm. Some transfers, some freshmen, but it's the best team that I've seen them have in the last couple of years. They got a kid from Kansas that transferred in 2 years at Kansas. She's actually from Hungary, 6'3", that fills a big void. They have not had a player that can play that 4 or 5 for a long time, but they're got good guards, and they play a style that's hard on a lot of teams because they really pressure you. A lot of teams don't pressure and things like that. They do, and this is a good team.
We did have one interesting result on Sunday. UCLA ended South Carolina's win streak.
Yeah, it's no fluke. UCLA was number 2 in the country.
Yeah,
probably behind South Carolina. That's probably just on reputation. UCLA is, they got a 6'6", 6'7" kid that's just tremendous.
Yeah.
And UCLA made a deep run last year. Iowa knocked them off last year in a tournament, and they returned most of the players. UCLA is a legit top 4 team in the country.
Yeah.
And they broke a long winning streak for South Carolina.
43 games, I think it was.
That's correct.
Yeah, and
if people don't follow, they think it's an upset, but it was at UCLA.
Yeah.
Probably not an upset.
Well, and if you look at South Carolina the last 2 years, I mean, they've lost 2 just like outstanding players 2 years in a row that other teams could not match up with Aaliyah Boston and Cordova.
Yeah, Cordova was 6'7".
Yeah. I mean, so there were two players that other teams had a hard time matching up with, even though they didn't win the national title the year before. I mean, that's the thing about them is they just generally put out teams that people can't match up with physically.
Yeah, they always have really big post players.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And they're usually pretty good too.
No, good ones. Yeah, not statues. That's right.
They're not just waiting around out there. But yeah. Anything else about the college basketball?
No,
stands out to you?
College basketball kind of takes a back seat this time of year.
Yeah.
But it's for people who want to follow, it's out there, and so forth. I went to Louisville and watched Louisville play Moorhead actually Thursday night in women, and Louisville and the men play at Indiana this Wednesday too. So
yeah. So how good? Well, Louisville's number 25, and I think
they lost to UCLA to start the year over in Paris by like 4. So that's they're not bad.
Yeah. And then the Kentucky women are back playing good this year.
Love their coach, Kenny Brooks. Excellent coach that came from Virginia Tech. Love their coach. Got a great point guard.
Yep. All right, it's the Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
John, we mentioned this in the first segment. Welcome back to the Brown Sports Bag. We talked about the fact that we're a week away from the high school basketball season, and that's kind of hard to believe in a way. But, we've had interviews on here so far. We've had Warren Cunningham and Brandon Stockton and Piper Lindsay and Kelsey Kirkpatrick from Barren and Glasgow. Next week we have Caverna's basketball coaches Terrence Miles and Andre Barber coming up. So to close out that, and it's almost here, and it's kind of fascinating because right out of the gate on the girls' side, especially, it's Franklin Simpson all the way. They got the best player in the region coming back, Larisha Cawthorn. And I think a lot of people are looking at it and thinking they're not going to be challenged in this region. And they looked like they weren't going to be challenged last year in the region. And then they got upset by Bowling Green in the regional semifinals. How do you think it kind of shapes up on the girls' side this year, John?
Yeah, they'll be heavily favored.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they got caught up last year. I don't think their schedule prepared them to what would happen when they got into a dogfight.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen their schedule. Maybe they corrected that, but you don't do yourself any favors by not putting, especially a good team, out there during the year to toughen you up and so forth. So they'll be a favorite, but there's some challengers. I think Barren will be better than people think. I mean, they lost Murphy and they lost Varney, two really good players, but I think Shelby Bird's a really good player.
Yeah.
And then you have the 2 senior players that are back. And,
Katie Elmore and Kay Gerald.
That's correct. And you have some post players and some other ones. I think they'll be better than people think. Metcalf returns all their players.
Uh-huh.
We'll see. I mean, they're really good offensively in terms of shooting. We'll see if they can build upon last year.
Yeah.
Allen back. They got the Morris kid who's good.
And Aubrey Nazer.
Warren East has some a lot of their players back. But it's clearly Franklin Simpson's region to lose. There's just no doubt. As long as they stay healthy, they're a heavy favorite.
Yeah. Is this the most? I mean, heavy favorite. Is this the most lopsided heavy favorite in the fourth region in a long time?
No,
you think?
no. Bowling Green had a couple years where they weren't going to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't going to lose. And in the past, there have been better teams than Franklin and Bowling Green.
Right.
We're talking about just relative.
Yeah.
I mean, Franklin is by far the best team this year. Bowling Green was by far, but several years ago you had several. I'll just give you an example. You had several teams all in the top 25.
Right.
There's been several times that's happened.
Yeah.
You haven't seen that lately.
No.
Franklin made the top 20 this year.
Yeah.
But you don't see anybody else with them.
Right. And then on the boys' side, I mean, it's always going to be Bowling Green, Warren Central. You got to pick between which one of those you think is going to win. So I'll ask more precisely, how do you think the 15th district shapes up on the boys' side?
That should be competitive, right?
Yeah.
Probably Glasgow may be the favorite.
It looks like it in the preseason.
Yeah, I mean, you got a new coach in Brandon Stockton, but he's been around the program and so forth. I mean, they've got, the one of the better players in the region back.
Jarek Martin.
Jared Martin, he was tremendous last year, and so they got they lost the point guard Walker.
Yeah,
he was a good player, but they should be probably the favorite. Warren East is up there. Barren, Barron's got their guards back. Plus, they got the transfer from Edmondson that's going to help them.
Right.
Allen still, I think, has a long way to go.
Yeah.
But I would think it'd be between Glasgow East and Barren. I'll give right now Glasgow's got, in my mind, is probably the favorite.
Yeah, one of the strange things is, like, at least right out of the gate, Barren is in a rare position that they're just now getting some of their players.
It's going to take them a while. Their guards of Bewley.
Yeah.
Of Tate Spillman and
Waylon
Clemens.
Yeah.
That's right. Those three.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jackson Bird's playing.
Yep.
They've lost 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And in the past, it'd been 2 weeks of practice and so forth. So it's going to. The good news is they've got tons of experience.
Yeah.
It won't take them. They're not going to have to learn new plays.
Right.
But they have to get their timing and they have to get in basketball shape.
Well, one thing that's going to be a little different this year as far as like broadcasting games is that the Barren County games are going to be on 104.7. We call that WCLU Burgundy. And then the Glasgow games are going to be on 103.1. We call that WCLU Blue. So we're going to carry both still on the frequencies they're used to being carried on. Plus, we'll, stream them online. We're going to have the video. We're going to do all that jazz for basketball season. So, I mean, everything's still going to be covered the same as it's ever been. And, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be, be here before we know it. We get to go eat some Thanksgiving turkey and then watch high school basketball, John.
Tuesday night, Barren goes to Green.
Yep, that's going to be an interesting game.
That's the first. That's correct.
Yep. All right, the Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, and we'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.